Pipkin and Solve Halloween all in one fell, dark blow. They thought of All Hallows Night, and the billion ghosts a-wandering the lonely lanes in cold winds and strange smokes. They thought of Pipkin, no more than a thimbleful of boy and sheer summer delight, torn out like a tooth and carried off on a black tide of web and horn and black soot, and almost as one they murmured, "Yes." Mound Shroud sprang. He ran. He pummeled. He pushed. He raved. "Quick now, along this path, up this rise, along this road, the abandoned farm, over the fence, alley-oop!" They leaped the fence, running, and stood by a barn that was frosted over with old circus posters, with banners tattered by wind pasted here 30, 40, 50 years back. Circuses passing through had left patches and swatches of themselves 10 inches thick. "A kite, boys, build a kite, quick." Chapter 7. No sooner had he cried this than Mr. Mound Shroud ripped a great tissue from the side of the barn. It fluttered in his hands. The eye of a tiger. Another rip from another ancient poster, and the mouth of a lion. The boys heard roars of Africa down the wind. They blinked. They ran. They scratched with fingernails. They plucked with hands. They seized off strips and patches and huge rolls of animal flesh, of fang and piercing eye, of wounded flank, of blood-red claw, of tail, of bound and leap and cry. The whole side of the barn was an ancient parade stopped dead. They tore it asunder, and with each tear that pulled off talon, tongue, or ravening feline eye. Beneath waited layer upon layer of jungle nightmare, delicious encounters with polar bears, panicked zebra, milling prides of lions, charging rhinos, clambering gorillas which pawed up the side of midnight and swung toward dawn. 1,000 animals in congregation rumbled to be set free, now free in fists and hands and fingers. Whistling on the autumn wind, the boys raced off across the grass. Now Mound Shroud knocked down old fence-railing beams and made a rough kite cross and bound them with wire, then stood back to receive the gifts of kite paper as the boys flung them in fistfuls, and these he tossed in place upon the frame and, spark-flinting, fused with burnings of his horny hands. "Hey!" the boys cried their delight. "Oh, look!" They had never seen such things, or known that men such as Mound Shroud, with a pinch, a clutch, a pressure of fingers, might blend an eye with tooth, a tooth with mouth, a mouth with feline bobcat tail, all mingled beautifully into a single thing. A wild jigsaw puzzle jungle zoo billowed and trapped, pasted and tied, growing, taking color and sound and pattern in the light of the ascending moon. Now another cannibal eye, now another hungry maw, a mad chimpanzee, a most insane mandrill ape, a screaming butcher bird. The boys ran up with the last frights handed over and the kite finished, the ancient flesh laid out, fused by the still blue smoke-burning horny hands. Mr. Mound Shroud lit a cigar with the last bit of fire that sparked out of his thumb and smiled, and the light from his smile showed the kite for what it was, a kite of destructions, of animals so dire and fierce their outcry drowned the wind and murdered the heart. He was pleased. The boys were pleased, for the kite somehow seemed to resemble. "Why," said Tom, astounded, "a pterodactyl!" "A what?" "Pterodactyl. Those ancient flying reptiles, gone some billion years back and never seen again," replied Mr. Mound Shroud. "Well said, boy. Pterodactyl it seems, and is, and 'twill fly us downwind to perdition, or Land's End, or some other fine-sounding place. But now, rope, twine, string, quick, filch and carry." They ran the rope off an old abandoned clothesline strung between barn and abandoned farmhouse, A good 90 feet or more of rope they brought Mound Shroud, who snaked it through his fist until it smoked a most unholy smoke. He tied it to the middle of the vast kite, which flapped like a somehow lost and out-of-water manta ray upon this high, strange beach. It struggled with wind to live. It flapped and floundered on the heaves of tidal air laid down on grass. Mound Shroud stood back, gave a jerk, and lo, the kite flew. It hung low upon the air at the end of its clothesline, in a dumb brute groveling of wind, veering this way, dashing that, leaping up suddenly to confront them with a wall of eyes, a solid flash of teeth, a storm of cries. "It won't rise, won't go straight. A tail. We need a tail." And as by instinct, Tom dived first and seized the kite by its bottom. He hung there. The kite steadied. It began to rise. "Yes," cried the dark man. "Oh, lad, you are the one. Bright boy, you be the tail. And more, and more." And as the kite slowly ascended the cold river of swift-flowing air, each boy in turn, seized with the whim, spurred by his wits, became more and yet more of the tail, which is to say that Henry Hank, disguised as a witch, grabbed Tom's ankles, and now the kite had two boys for its magnificent tail. And Ralph Bengstrom, wound up in his mummy clothes, stumbling over his winding tapes, smothered in his burial rags, shambled forward, jumped, and grabbed Henry Hank's ankles. So 3 boys hung now in a tail. "Wait, here I come!" cried Beggar, who under his dirt and rags was really Fred Fryer. He jumped, he caught. The kite ascended. The 4 boys making the tail yelled for more length. They got it when the boy dressed as an ape-man scrambled and grabbed ankles, followed by the boy dressed as Death with a scythe, who did dangerously likewise. "Watch out with that scythe!" The scythe fell and lay in the grass like a lost smile. But the 2 boys hung down now from all the half-washed ankles, and the kite rose more, higher, higher, adding a boy and a boy and a boy, until with a yell and a shout, 8 boys were down-hung in a magnificent thrashing tail, the last 2 being Ghost, who was truly George Smith, and Wally Babb, who had, inspired, made himself up to look like a gargoyle fallen off the top of a cathedral. The boys yelled with elation. The kite swooped and took off. "Hey!" Whoosh! The kite purred with 1,000 animal whispers. Whang! The kite ropes strummed the wind. "Hush!" said the entire thing, and the wind flew them high across the stars, leaving Mound Shroud to look up with awe at his contraption, his kite, his boys. "Wait!" he shouted. "Don't wait! Come on!" the boys yelled. Mound Shroud ran along the grass to seize the scythe. His cape fluttered, taking air, making wings, until he also, very simply, took off and soared. Chapter 8. The kite flew. The boys hung down from the kite in a fine lizard's tail, now weaving, now looping, now snapping, now gliding. They yelled with delight. They shrieked with in-gasped, out-gasped terror. They rode across the moon in an exclamation point. They soared over hills and meadows and farms. They saw themselves reflected in dusky moon-bright streams, creeks, rivers. They brushed down over ancient trees. The wind stirred by their passing shook down whole government mints of coins, leaves, bright showering to the black-grassed earth. They flew over the town and thought, "Oh, look up! See! Here we are! Your sons!" And thought, "Oh, look down! There somewhere are our mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, teachers. Hey! Here we are! Oh, someone see us, or you'll never believe." And in a last swoop the kite whistled, hummed, drummed along the winds to float over the old house and the Halloween tree where first they had met, Mound Shroud. Swoop, flutter, glide, rush, hiss. The suction of their swung bodies caused 1,000 candles to flutter, flicker, stutter their light, hiss with desire to reflame themselves, so all the hung pumpkin scowls and leers and wild smiles were half snuffed to unhappy shadows. The whole tree went dead for a heartbeat. Then, as the kite sang high, the tree blazed up with 1,000 new-cut pumpkin frowns, glares, grimaces, and grins. The windows of the house, black mirrors, saw the kite go away and away until the boys and the kite and Mr. Moundshroud were very small on the horizon, and then down they sailed off away deep into the undiscovered country of old death and strange years in the frightful past. "Where are we going?" cried Tom, hanging to the kite's tail. "Yes, where?" cried all the boys, one after another, below. "Not where, but when," said Moundshroud, pacing them, his great veiled cloak full of moon wind and time. 2,000, count them, years before Christ. Pipkin's there, waiting. I smell it. Fly!" Then the moon began to blink. It closed up its eye, and there was darkness. Then faster and faster it began to wink, to wax, to wane, to wax again, until 1,000 times over it flickered and in flickering changed the landscape below, and then 50,000 times, so fast they could not see it, the moon extinguished and relit itself, and the moon stopped winking and held very still, and the land was changed. "Look," said Moundshroud, hung upon the very air above them, and the million tiger, lion, leopard, panther eyes of the autumn kite looked down, as did the eyes of the boys, and the sun rose, showing them Egypt, the river Nile, the Sphinx, the pyramids. "But," said Moundshroud, "notice anything different?" "Why," gasped Tom, "it's all new. It's just been built. That means we really have gone back in time 4,000 years. And sure enough, the Egypt that lay below was ancient sand but new-cut stone. The Sphinx, with its great lion paws treaded out on the golden stuffs of desert, was sharp-cut and freshly born out of the womb of stone mountains. It was a vast pup in the bright and empty glare of noon. If the sun had fallen and lay between its paws, it would have cuffed it like a fireball toy. The pyramids? Why, they lay like strange-shaped blocks, yet other games to be puzzled over, played with by the woman-lion Sphinx. The kite zoomed down and skirted the sand dunes, flirted over one pyramid, and was drawn, as by suction, by an open tomb mouth set in a small cliff. "Hey, presto!" cried Moundshroud. With a flap he gave the kite such a kick as made the boys toll like clamorous bells. "Hey, now!" they cried. The kite shuddered, fell down, hovered 10 feet above the dunes, and shook itself like a wild dog ridding itself of fleas. The boys fell safe in golden sand. The kite broke away in 1,000 shreds of eyes, fangs, shrieks, roars, elephant trumpetings. The Egyptian tomb-mouth sucked them in, and Moundshroud laughing with it. "Mr. Moundshroud, wait!" Leaping up, the boys ran to shout into the dark tomb doorway. Then they lifted their gaze and saw where they were. The Valley of the Kings, where huge stone gods loomed above. Dust sifted in a strange downpour of tears from their eyes, tears made of sand and powdered rock. The boys leaned into the shadows. Like a dry river bottom, the corridors led down to deep vaults where lay the linen-wrapped dead. Dust fountains echoed and played in strange courtyards a mile below. The boys ached, listening. The tomb breathed out a sick exhalation of paprika, cinnamon, and powdered camel dung. Somewhere a mummy dreamed, coughed in its